They thought she was just another woman walking into a diner. They laughed, they sneered, and then they crossed a line that would change their careers forever. What they didn't know was that the woman they humiliated was about to become their new boss. This story takes place in a small town in the American South, a place where outsiders often weren't welcome, and where racism still lingered like smoke in the air. For years, the local police department had been accused of discrimination, but nothing ever seemed to change. That is, until one morning in 2018. The woman at the center of this story was Angela Simmons. Smart, determined, and respected in law enforcement circles, she had quietly risen through the ranks. But she wasn't flashy, and she certainly didn't walk around announcing her title. On this particular morning, she was in town early, waiting for an official announcement that would shock the entire police force. Angela walked into a diner just down the street from the police station. She was dressed casually, not in uniform, and she ordered a cup of coffee to go. Sitting at a nearby table were two off-duty police officers, men who prided themselves on being untouchable in the town. They noticed Angela. They didn't see a leader. They didn't see authority. All they saw was a black woman sitting alone. They started with whispers, comments meant for her to hear. Then one of them got up, walked past her table, and deliberately tipped his cup, spilling hot coffee toward her. The liquid splashed across the table, narrowly missing her hand. The officers laughed as if it were a joke. Angela said nothing. She simply stood up, cleaned herself off, and left. A few hours later, the entire department was called into an emergency meeting. The mayor stepped forward to introduce their new police chief. When Angela walked into the room, the same two officers who mocked her earlier went pale. Their jaws dropped. The woman they had just humiliated was now their commanding officer. Angela didn't need to yell. She didn't need to threaten. She simply looked at the men, then at the rest of the department, and said, "Respect isn't optional. It's the standard. And from this moment on, things will be different." The officers who threw coffee at her were investigated and eventually suspended. But more importantly, the culture of the department began to change. Angela became known as the chief who turned humiliation into transformation, who proved that leadership doesn't need revenge. It needs vision. Her story isn't just about one act of racism. It's about how the people who think they're above the rules often end up learning the hardest lessons. So what do you think? Should the officers have been fired on the spot, or did suspension send the right message? Comment below. And if you want more stories of justice being served in unexpected ways, hit subscribe, because the next case I'll share will leave you speechless.